I watched security carry my things out in black bags. Father said it was personnel optimization, but I knew in an hour I would be arrested for stealing $4 million. The elevator rose to the 40th floor and stopped, but the doors didn't open. I tapped my card against the reader again. Red light. The turnstile emitted a sharp, unpleasant beep that echoed through the empty hall. The guard, whom I had known for 5 years, didn't even look up from his monitor. His face was stony, his shoulders tense. I tapped on the glass. He slowly pressed the intercom button and said my clearance level had been revoked. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't a system error. Mistakes of this level didn't happen in our corporation. I pulled out my phone to call Father, the CEO, but there was no signal. The screen displayed the no service icon. My corporate SIM card had been remotely disabled. The elevator jerked and went down to the garage, giving me no choice. I realized I was being squeezed out of the building without a single word. It was a quiet, surgical operation to remove me from the company my grandfather built. Downstairs by my car, 2 men in plain clothes were already waiting. I recognized the head of family security. He wasn't smiling. He was holding a clear plastic evidence bag. The head of security, Mr. Vance, asked me to hand over my car keys and laptop. It wasn't a request. His hand rested on his hip, near the holster hidden under his jacket. I asked what was happening, why I was being greeted like a criminal. Vance silently pointed to a black SUV with tinted windows parked by the exit. The rear door opened. My mother was sitting there. She was wearing dark glasses, even though it was dark in the underground garage. I got into the car. Inside, it smelled of leather and sterility. Mother didn't take off her glasses. She handed me a tablet. A bank report was open on the screen. A transaction for $4 million transferred to an offshore account registered in my name. The transfer date was last night. I looked at the numbers and couldn't believe my eyes. I never opened that account. I never saw that money. I started saying it was a fake, that I was hacked. Mother interrupted me. She said the audit found the discrepancy this morning. The board of directors is furious. If this gets out, the stocks will plummet. But I heard a threat. They had already built a story where I was the villain. We weren't driving to the police station, but to the family's country estate. I tried to explain that the digital footprint could be traced, that any expert would prove my innocence. Mother pressed a button, raising the partition between us and the driver. She said experts were already working. Our experts. She explained that the family decided not to involve the feds immediately. They want to resolve this quietly. It sounded like mercy, but I knew how my family worked. Quietly meant total control. We drove through the estate gates. High walls, barbed wire, cameras on every corner. Before I saw this as protection from the outside world. Now I saw the perimeter of a prison. In the hall waited Darian, my older brother, the CFO, the man who had real access to those accounts. He looked exhausted. His tie loosened. He didn't look me in the eye. He was looking at my shoes. "You should have been more careful, Kaylin," he said quietly. There was no accusation in his voice, only fatigue and fear. I realized he knew the truth. He doesn't just know, he is the architect of this lie. Father came out of the library. He was holding a folder with documents. He didn't waste time on greetings. He threw the folder onto the marble table. "Admission of guilt," he said. The document had already been drafted by the company lawyers. It stated that I admitted to embezzlement due to a gambling addiction and agreed to repay the funds from my share of the inheritance. I laughed. It was a nervous, broken sound. I said I didn't have any addiction. I said I wouldn't sign a lie. Father stepped in close. He was a head taller than me. "You have no choice," he said. "If you sign, we send you to a clinic in Switzerland for 2 years. Everything will be forgotten. If not, we hand these documents to the FBI tonight." I looked at Darian. He turned away to the window, studying the garden. He knew the money went to cover his future's debts. I saw the reports on his desk a month ago, but didn't think much of it. Now the puzzle came together. They were saving the golden boy by sacrificing the spare. I tried to leave the house, but the doors were locked with electronic locks. My access code to the house was also wiped. "It's for your own good," Mother said. "You are unstable right now." They took my wallet, watch, and even my belt. The search was humiliating. Vance, The head of security checked my pockets with professional indifference. No gadgets, Father ordered. No contact with the outside world until we resolved the situation. I was taken to the East Wing, to a room that used to be a nursery. The windows had reinforced frames, the internet cable was ripped from the wall. I was left alone. I heard them discussing strategy downstairs. The voices were muffled but calm. They weren't panicking. For them, this was just a business problem. Crisis management. I was a liability that needed to be written off. I checked the door, locked from the outside. I started inspecting the room. There was nothing here except old furniture and books. No electronics. 5 hours passed. The sun began to set, flooding the room with an unsettling orange light. Darian walked in. He brought a tray of food, sandwiches and water. He looked as if he were the victim himself. "You don't understand, Cale," he began. "The market is volatile. If investors find out I made a mistake, we lose everything. The company will be dismembered." I looked at him and felt only cold contempt. He was asking me to take the blame for a crime that would ruin my life, just to keep the stock price up. "Why me?" I asked. Darian shrugged. "Because you have no ambition. You don't need the CEO chair, but I do." It was that simple. My life was worth less than his career. He placed a pen on the bed. "Sign it, and we will take care of you. You will live in comfort, just in the shadows." He left without waiting for an answer. I picked up the sandwich but couldn't take a bite. I was nauseated by their logic. They didn't consider this betrayal. They considered it resource optimization. At night, I heard noise in the hallway. Someone was arguing in whispers. It was Mother and Vance. "We can't keep him forever," Vance was saying. "If he doesn't sign by morning, we have to call the cops. We can't risk a kidnapping charge." Mother replied sharply, "He will sign. I know which buttons to push." I realized time was running out. I had one night. I started thinking. Darian was sloppy. He was always sloppy with details. He said he transferred the money last night. But last night, our security system was undergoing a scheduled server update. From 2 o'clock to 4 a.m., any external transactions required a physical key token, a token kept in Father's safe. If the transaction went through, someone physically opened the safe. I didn't have the safe code. Darian did. Father did. This was proof. But how to get it? I needed access to the server logs, but I was locked in a room without a computer. I remembered the smart home. The entire mansion control system was tied to a single network. But an old thermostat control panel hung on the wall. Digital. Connected to Wi-Fi for remote control. It was a slim chance, but the only one. I pried off the plastic casing of the panel, breaking my nails. Underneath were thin wires and a small circuit board. I wasn't a hacker, but I worked in the IT department for 2 years before being moved to analytics. I knew these old thermostat models had a service port. If I could short the contacts, I would trigger a system reboot in this room. Maybe it would reset the door lock too, if they were on the same circuit. I used the metal buckle from my shoe, the only thing I had left. I shorted 2 contacts. There was a crackle, sparks flew. The thermostat screen went dark. The light in the room flickered. I didn't hear the lock click. The plan failed. The system was too secure. The door opened, but not because of my tampering. Mother walked in. She saw the dismantled thermostat and shook her head as if I had broken a vase. "You're only making your situation worse," she said. "Vandalism, another charge." She sat on the edge of the bed. "I came to make a deal. If you sign, I guarantee your exile will be comfortable. We will buy you a house in Italy. You will receive dividends. No one will know where you are." She was offering me a gilded cage. I looked her in the eyes. "You know it was Darian. You know he took Father's key." Her face froze for a second. The mask cracked. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "Darian is the face of the company. You're not. We are protecting investments, not the truth." It was the most honest thing she had said all day. She admitted I was expendable. "You have until 8 a.m., she said, standing up. "Then a federal agent will arrive. A friend of ours." When she left, she didn't notice a small object fall from her pocket. It was a smart key for the garage. She was too agitated by the conversation, too focused on manipulation. The key landed on the soft carpet without a sound. I waited until the door closed and the lock clicked. I rushed to the carpet. I had the key, but I was still locked in the room. The smart key opened the garage, not the bedroom door. I went back to the thermostat. I was wrong the first time. I tried to hack the system. I needed to use physics. The hole for the thermostat wires went into the wall. The wall was drywall, behind it a utility shaft. I started picking at the drywall with the buckle, slowly, so as not to make noise. An hour later, I had a hole the size of a fist. I reached in. I felt the door lock cable. If I cut the power, the magnetic lock should release. It's a fire safety standard. I yanked the wire with all my might. The lock clicked. The door cracked open an inch. I stepped into the dark hallway. The house was asleep, or so I thought. I moved toward the stairs but heard voices in Father's office. Light spilled from under the door. I crept closer. "We can't just hand him over," Darian was saying. His voice trembled. "If he talks in court," Father replied harshly, "he won't talk. Dr. Shepard has already prepared the medical report. Paranoid delusions, stress. No one will believe his words about tokens and keys." I froze. They weren't going to send me to Switzerland. They were going to declare me insane. This would strip me of legal capacity. I wouldn't be able to hire a lawyer, manage money, or testify. It was a complete erasure of identity. I needed to run not just from the house. I needed to flee the country or find irrefutable evidence right now. I knew where the house server room was, in the basement, next to the wine cellar. The security camera backups were stored there. If I could copy the video of Darian taking the key to Father's safe, it would be the end of their game. I went downstairs, stepping on the edges of the stairs. The basement door was open. I entered the server room. The hum of fans drowned out my steps. I found the right rack. I needed physical access to the console. I sat at the admin terminal and entered my old service code. It still worked. They forgot to disable the local admin. I found the file. Cam Office 0300 AM. I pressed the copy button to cloud storage. The loading bar crawled. 10%. 50%. Suddenly I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned sharply. Vance stood in the doorway. He wasn't smiling. "Did you really think we didn't put motion sensors in the server room?" he asked. He blocked the exit with his massive body. There was no escape route. Yanking the internet cable from the socket. "Upload interrupted," he said with a smirk. "The evidence stays here, and it will burn along with your reputation." He pulled out his radio to call Father. I raised my hands as if surrendering, but I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at a small green light on another server rack. Vance didn't know one thing. When I worked in IT, I set up a doomsday protocol. It was a script triggered by a physical connection break during admin activity. The system interpreted Vance's action not as a disconnection, but as sabotage. "You're right," I said quietly. "Upload interrupted, but the security protocol is activated." Vance frowned. "What are you talking about?" At that moment, the whole house wailed with a siren. It wasn't a fire alarm. It was a corporate breach signal that automatically sends a data packet to the SEC and FBI. I wasn't trying to copy the video to the cloud. I used the copy attempt as bait to force them to cut the connection and launch an automated fraud report. "The files are already with the feds," I said. "You're too late." 10 minutes later, the estate gates were rammed by an armored vehicle. Federal agents burst into the house. I walked out of the basement with my hands visible, but they hadn't come for me. I saw handcuffs being placed on Father's wrists, right in his office. Mother screamed that it was a mistake, threatening to fire everyone, but the agent only read her rights. Darian sat on the floor in the hallway, crying like a child. His career was over before it began. Vance tried to escape through the back door, but was tackled on the lawn. A week later, the board of directors held an emergency meeting. My parents' assets were seized to repay the debt, but the company itself survived. They needed a new leader, a person who knew the system from the inside and proved his integrity. I walked into Father's office. It was my office now. I sat in the chair, placed a clean sheet of paper on the desk, and picked up a pen. There were no more debts, no more isolation. I was free, and the company belonged to me now. Justice was served. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, like it, and click on the bell so you don't miss any more stories. See you soon.